Hello 7 Blue. Our next module is on percents, and this first lesson, the purpose is for students to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. But before we do that, we first have to define what is a percent. Percent means per hundred. So if we were to write that as a fraction, this numerator would represent the percent because it is out of 100. The three ways that you can write numbers is as percents, fractions, and decimals. And this first section we're going to talk about how do you convert a percent to a fraction in simplest form. So let's look at example 1. 37%, remember, means 37 out of 100. And that fraction is already in simplest form because 37 is a prime number. Example 2, 24% would be 24 out of 100. Now this fraction, you can divide the numerator and denominator by 4, and you would get the fraction 6/25. Go ahead and pause the video and try the next two examples on your own, 12% and 55%. Okay, let's see how you did. 12% would be 12 out of 100. You can divide the numerator and the denominator by 4. So this fraction in simplest form would be 3/25. Did you get that one right? Good. Now the next one, 55%, would be 55 out of 100. You can divide the numerator and denominator by 5. So this fraction in simplest form would be 11/20. So that's how you simplify fractions and convert percents to fractions. The next section we're going to talk about how to change percents to decimals and decimals to percents. So to do that, remember percentage means out of 100. So 9% would be 9 out of 100. The fraction bar in math means to divide. So on your calculator, if you typed in 9 divided by 100, you would get the decimal 0.09, which you'd say that as 9/100ths because that 9 is in the 100th place value. Now there is a trick. If you look up here, if we're taking a percent and moving it to a decimal or converting it to a decimal, we would move the decimal 2 places to the left. So 9%, the decimal would be behind the 9, and we would move it over tenths, hundredths, 2 places to the left, and we would get 9/100ths or 0.09. Now here you would erase your percent symbol because it's no longer a percent. It's now a decimal. Okay, let's try the next one. Now this one already is a decimal, but it is with a percent. So that would be 1/2 of a percent, so 1/2 out of 100. So on your calculator, type in 1/2 divided by 100. And you'll get the decimal 0.005. Now this decimal you would read as 5/1000ths because the 5 is in the 1,000th place value. Or you could remember the trick. 0.5%, you'd move the decimal over tenths, hundredths, 2 place values to the left. And you would erase the percent symbol for that, and you would still get the decimal 5/1000ths or 0.005. And then we have a percent that is over 100%. This would be like extra credit. So 250%. That would be 250 out of 100. So if you type that into your calculator, 250 divided by 100, you would get the decimal 2.5. Or with the trick, 250%, the decimal would be right here. Move the place value, the decimal 2 place values to the left, 1, 2, and the decimal would now go right there between the 2 and the 5. Go ahead and pause the video and try the next two examples on your own. Okay, let's see how you did. So 27% would be 27 out of 100 on your calculator. If you divided 27 by 100, you would get 0.27 or 27/100ths. 3.4% would be 3.4 out of 100. So if you divide 3.4 by 100, you will get the decimal 0.034. And how you would say that is 34 thousandths, because this 4 is in the thousandth place value. Okay, now let's talk about how to change a decimal to a percent. Now that's going to be the opposite of changing a percent to a decimal. So we just talked about changing percents to decimals, and you would divide by 100. Now we're going to take a decimal and change it back to a percent. So we're going to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So you have two options. You can either multiply by 100 on your calculator, and you'll get 13%, or right here, if you remember the trick, now this time we're going from a decimal to a percent, so we're going to the right. So that means we're going to move the decimal place 2 place values, tenths, hundredths, to the right. And either way, you would get 13%. For our next example, remember you have two options. You can either multiply by 100, and for that you would get 2.7%, or you can take the decimal and move it 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths, so the decimal would be right there, so it'd still be 2.7%. All right, go ahead and pause the video again and try the next two examples to see if you understand this. All right, let's see what you did on this one. Remember your two options. You can either multiply by 100 to get 4%, or you have the option of remembering just moving the decimal 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths, and either way, hopefully you got 4%. 578 thousandths, we'd move the decimal 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths, or you can multiply by 100, and hopefully you got 57.8%, and the way you would read that is 57 8/10ths of a percent. Our last section is changing fractions to percents. So you have two options for this as well. You can either find the denominator of 100, because remember percent is out of 100. So to do that, we would multiply the numerator and the denominator by 10 to get 30/100ths. So that would be 30%. Or you have that other option of knowing that the fraction bar means to divide. So you can change it to a decimal first, which would be 0.3. And then remember to change a decimal to a percent. You would move it 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths, and you would get 30%. Okay, let's try the next one, 5/6. Now, I cannot think of a whole number that I can multiply 6 by to get 100. So for this one, I'm going to use the other option of doing 5 divided by 6 on my calculator, and you'll get 0.83 repeating. So if I were to change that decimal to a percent, I would move the decimal 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths. Now this one's a little bit tricky because that 3 is repeating. So as a decimal, it really looks like this, where the 3 keeps on repeating. So if I were to move that decimal 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths, that would be 83.3 repeating percent. Or remember when we memorized our fractions and decimals, that would be 83 1/3%. That would be the correct answer as well, because 3 repeating is 1/3. All right, pause the video again and try the next two examples on your own, changing 4/5 and 5/16 to a percent. Okay, let's see how you did on this one. Now, 4/5 is a fraction we memorized earlier in the year, and that is 0.8 as a decimal. So if I moved the decimal 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths, that would be 80%. Or your other option is changing that denominator to 100, so you can multiply by 20 to do that. And you would get 81/100ths, which is 80%. Now for the next one, this one I would have divided by 16 because I can't think of a whole number that I can multiply 16 by to get 100. So when you do that, you get the decimal 0.3125. Move the decimal 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths. So that would be 31.25%. Or, if you remember, 0.25 is the same thing as 1/4. So you could also write that as 31 1/4%. All right, finally, to end our video, go ahead and try this last chart. Fill in the chart and convert all these percents, decimals, and fractions back and forth to one another. So pause the video and give that chart a try. Okay, let's see how you did. So 350%, if you remember our rules, to change a percent to a decimal, that would be 350 over 100 as a fraction. So that means to take 350 and divide by 100. So our rule, we could move that 2 place values to the left, tenths, hundredths. So as a decimal, it would be 3.5. Now, 350 hundredths, you can simplify that to 7/2, so that would also be correct. Okay, the next one, 25 thousandths, because that 5 is in the thousandth place value. So as a fraction, I would write it as 25 thousandths. Okay. That doesn't, let me go ahead and erase that. The pen didn't really work on that one. There we go. We can simplify 25 thousandths to 1/40th. And then to change a decimal to a percent, remember you move the place value, the decimal 2 place values to the right. So that would be 2.5%. Or your other option is to multiply that decimal by 100. Okay, the fraction 1/8. We memorized that earlier in the year. If you didn't remember that, you can just type 1 divided by 8 on your calculator. And as a decimal, that's 0.125 or 125 thousandths. And then to change that decimal to a percent, we'll move it 2 place values to the right, tenths, hundredths. So that would be 12.5%. Or your other option is you can multiply that decimal by 100. So how'd you do? Good. All right, so thank you for watching this video, and we will see you in class tomorrow.